The afternoon sun was a pale, tired yellow in the late autumn sky. It cast long, skinny shadows from the pumps at the Pine Creek Gas and Go, a lonely outpost about 20 miles from the nearest real town. The air had a bite to it, a dry cold that promised a frosty night. Deputy Riley stood by his county sheriff's cruiser, the nozzle clicking steadily in the tank. He was finishing up a long shift, the kind filled with paperwork and a few pointless calls about stray dogs. His mind was already drifting toward home, toward a warm dinner and kicking off his boots. This gas station was a regular stop for him. It was the kind of place that had seen better days. The sign flickered, one of the letters in gas giving up the ghost. Inside, the clerk, an older man with a kind face, spent most of his time watching a small television behind the counter. It was quiet. It was almost always quiet. The sound of an engine, rough and grumbling like it needed a good mechanic, pulled him from his thoughts. An RV, one of those older, boxy models from the 90s, painted a faded tan with a rust-colored stripe along its side, rolled slowly off the county road and up to the pump opposite him. Deputy Riley glanced at it, a casual, automatic look. Part of the job was noticing things, even when you were off the clock. The RV had out-of-state plates, dusty from travel. The windows were a little grimy. The driver's door opened with a metallic squeak. A man stepped out. He was maybe in his 50s, with thinning hair and a face that looked worn, like a road map of tired lines. He moved stiffly, stretching his back for a second before turning to the pump. He didn't look around. He didn't glance at the deputy or the cruiser. He just started filling his tank, his eyes fixed on the numbers ticking upward dot. It was that lack of looking that made Deputy Riley look a little harder. Most people, when they pull up next to a police car, give it a quick once-over. This man acted like it wasn't even there. That's when Riley saw the girl. She was in the passenger seat, pressed against the window. He guessed she was about 12, maybe a little younger. She had straight, brown hair and was wearing a plain gray sweatshirt. She wasn't moving. She wasn't playing on a phone or fidgeting. She was just sitting there, perfectly still, staring out the windshield at nothing in particular. Her expression was blank. Not bored, exactly. More like empty. Like a television tuned to a dead channel. For a split second, her eyes slid sideways and met his. It was just a flash of contact. Then, as if a switch had been flipped, she jerked her head forward again, staring straight ahead. Her hands, which had been in her lap, didn't move. Something about that tiny, frightened movement, that quick cut of eye contact, sent a quiet jolt through the deputy. It was a feeling in his gut, a prickling on the back of his neck. It was the feeling he got when a story didn't quite add up, when a person's body language screamed something their mouth wasn't saying. He kept his own movements slow and casual. He hung the nozzle back on his pump and screwed the cap back on his tank. He leaned against his cruiser, pretending to check something on his phone. But his attention was locked on the RV. The man finished pumping. He gave the girl a look through the window, a sharp, pointed look, and then walked toward the gas station's small store, the little bell on the door jingling as he went inside. The girl was alone. Deputy Riley watched. The girl didn't turn her head. She didn't look toward the store. She sat like a statue, her hands now clenched together in her lap. He could see the tension in her shoulders, even from a distance. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, he thought. Asterisk a tired kid on a long road trip with a grumpy dad. It happens. Asterisk, but that look in her eyes. It wasn't the look of a kid annoyed about a car ride. It was a deep, hollow kind of fear. It was the look of a rabbit frozen in tall grass, hoping the hawk won't see it. He decided to wait, to watch. His shift was over, but this feeling in his gut wasn't. He opened his car door and sat in the driver's seat, leaving the door ajar, making it look like he was doing some paperwork. It gave him a better angle. The man was inside for a couple of minutes. The world seemed to get very quiet. The only sound was the faint whisper of the wind across the asphalt. Then something changed. Slowly, so slowly it was almost imperceptible, the girl's head began to turn. Not toward the store, toward him. Her eyes, wide and dark, found his again through the two windshields and the space between the pumps. This time she held his gaze. The blankness was gone. Now her face was pure, raw, pleading. Her left hand, the one farthest from the store window, came up from her lap. It was trembling. She made a fist, then carefully, deliberately, extended just her index finger and her pinky finger, tucking her thumb over the other two. She held her hand up, the shape clear against the glass dot. It was a universal silent symbol. The shape of a telephone. Call. Deputy Riley's blood went cold. Every sense was suddenly screaming. She didn't stop there. Still holding his gaze, her eyes begging him to understand, she pointed her other index finger frantically downward. She jabbed it toward the floor of the RV, right by her feet. Then, hearing something he couldn't, she snapped her hand back into her lap, the phone gesture gone. Her body swiveled back to face the front, the empty mask slamming back down over her features. The bell on the store door jingled. The man walked out, carrying a couple of bottles of water and a bag of chips. He never looked at the deputy. He climbed back into the driver's seat of the RV. The engine coughed to life. Deputy Riley didn't hesitate. As the RV began to pull forward, he reached for his radio, his eyes fixed on the license plate. He recited the number and the description of the vehicle, his voice low and steady. "County, this is Deputy Riley. I need a plate run immediate. Also, I am in pursuit of that vehicle for a possible welfare check on a juvenile passenger. Requesting a second unit to my location to assist." The dispatcher's voice crackled back in acknowledgement. The RV turned left, heading west on the county road, picking up speed. Deputy Riley started his cruiser, the engine purring to life. He pulled out of the gas station, keeping a safe distance, his heart beating a steady, heavy rhythm against his ribs. The image of the girl's terrified eyes and that desperate, silent phone was burned into his mind. The quiet afternoon was over. Now it was a race against time, and he had no idea what he was racing toward. He just knew he had to follow. He had to find out what, or who, that young girl was silently screaming to be saved from. The cruiser rolled onto the county road, its tires humming on the old asphalt. Deputy Riley kept a steady distance, about 3 car lengths behind the tan RV. He didn't turn his lights on. Not yet. The last thing he wanted was to spook the man into doing something stupid on this winding road. He kept his eyes locked on the vehicle ahead. The girl was just a blur in the passenger window now. He replayed the last 2 minutes in his head on a loop. The empty stare, the sudden, fearful connection, the trembling hand, that phone signal, the frantic point to the floor. What was on the floor? A phone? A note? Something she couldn't get to? The radio crackled, and the dispatcher's calm voice filled the car. Deputy Riley on that plate. Vehicle is registered to a David Klein, address in Havenbrook, about 3 states over. No wants, no warrants. Registration is current. A clean record. That didn't mean anything. It just meant he'd never been caught. "Copy that," Riley said into the mic, his voice tight. "I'm going to initiate a stop. Location is County Road 7, heading west toward the mile 22 marker. Request a second unit for backup, non-emergency. Second unit is en route, ETA 8 minutes. 8 minutes. It could feel like a lifetime. He had to make this stop smooth, normal, like a broken taillight. He needed to get the man out of that RV, get a closer look, buy some time. He eased his foot down, closing the gap. He reached to his console and flipped the switch for just his rear red and blue lights, leaving the siren off. The pulsating glow reflected off the RV's wide rear-view mirrors. For a second, nothing happened. The RV kept going at the same speed. Then the driver's brake lights flared bright red. The big vehicle slowed, its right side tires crunching on the gravel shoulder before coming to a full stop near a stand of tall, bare trees. Riley pulled in behind him, leaving a good cushion of space. He called in his exact location, then took a slow, deep breath. His hand rested on the door handle. He looked at the RV. The curtains in the back were drawn shut. The passenger window was still empty. He couldn't see the girl. He stepped out. A cold air hit him again. The only sounds were the idle of the two engines and the whisper of the wind in the pines. He approached the driver's side of the RV, walking at an angle so he could see inside the cab. His right hand rested casually, but ready, near his belt. The driver's window was already rolling down. The man, David Klein, had his hands visible on the steering wheel. He offered a thin, tight smile. "Afternoon, officer. Was I speeding? This old rig doesn't have much get up and go." His voice was friendly, but it sounded forced. The lines around his eyes were tight with strain. "Afternoon, sir," Riley said, keeping his tone even and professional. "I just need to see your license and registration, please." Sure, no problem." The man's movements were quick, almost too eager. He fumbled in a visor, pulled out some papers, then reached for his wallet. He handed them over. Riley took them, his eyes scanning the interior. The cab was cluttered. Maps, empty coffee cups, a worn jacket on the seat between the two front chairs. The girl was still in the passenger seat. She was looking straight ahead, her hands in her lap, perfectly still. She looked smaller up close. "And who's your passenger today?" Riley asked, making it sound like casual conversation. "Oh, that's my niece," the man said, the words coming out in a practiced rush. "We're on a little road trip, seeing some sights before school starts back up." Riley nodded slowly, looking from the license photo to the man's face. "Long way from home, Mr. Klein. Heading anywhere in particular?" "Just west," the man said, waving a hand vaguely. "Playing it by ear. You know, the adventure of it." Riley's eyes drifted to the girl. "Hello there," he said, his voice softening just a touch. She didn't turn. She gave the tiniest, almost imperceptible shake of her head. A warning. "Don't," the man jumped in. "She's shy. Really tired from the drive. Aren't you, kiddo?" He reached over and gave her shoulder a squeeze. It was meant to look affectionate, but Riley saw the girl flinch, just a little, like his touch was hot. Her jaw clenched. Something was very wrong. The story was too vague. The man was too nervous for a simple traffic stop. The girl was terrified, silent. Just then, Riley saw something on the center console. It was a phone charger cord, plugged into the RV's power outlet. The little branded tag on the plug was for a popular, expensive smartphone. But there was no phone attached to it. His mind snapped back to the gas station. Her desperate hand signal. Phone. Then her pointed finger. Down. He needed to get them separated. He needed a reason to look inside. "Mr. Klein, your right brake light is out. It's one of those combination ones, part of the tail light assembly. I just need you to step out and take a look with me so you know what you'll need to fix." The man's smile flickered. "Is that all? I can get that fixed next town over." "County ordinance," Riley said evenly, not backing down. "I just need to show you. It'll take a second." He took a step back, making space. For a heartbeat, the man just sat there, his mind working behind his eyes. He clearly didn't want to get out, but he also didn't want to argue with a deputy over a broken light. Finally, He let out a short sigh. All right, sure. He opened the door and stepped down onto the gravel. Riley guided him to the back of the RV, pointing at the perfectly functional brake light. See here, he said, tapping the glass. This whole section is dark when you press the pedal. The man leaned in, pretending to look. Yeah, I see it. From the corner of his eye, Riley saw the glint of another sheriff's cruiser pulling up quietly behind his own. Lights off. Back up. A young deputy, a woman, stepped out and stood by her car, watching. Riley gave her a slight nod. He turned back to the man. I'm going to issue you a warning for that, Mr. Klein. Just get it fixed within 10 days. Now, while we're here, I'd like to just take a quick peek inside the vehicle. Routine stuff. Make sure everything's in order. The man's face went pale. Inside? Why? It's just a brake light. Just a routine safety check, Riley said, his voice still calm, but leaving no room for argument. It won't take a minute. He didn't wait for permission. He walked back toward the driver's door. The man followed. His steps hurried. Officer, really? It's a mess in there. We've been driving for days. Riley opened the driver's door and leaned in. The cab smelled of stale coffee and old fast food. He looked at the passenger seat. The girl was staring at him, her eyes wide and pleading. He glanced down at the floor near her feet. There was a cheap rubber floor mat. Under the edge of it, he could just see a tiny corner of something thin and metallic. A phone? He couldn't reach for it. Not with the man right behind him. He straightened up and turned. The female deputy had walked over and was standing a few feet away. Mr. Klein, Riley said. This is Deputy Flores. She's going to stay here and talk with you about getting that light fixed. He then looked past the man, directly at the girl in the passenger seat. His voice was gentle but firm. And young lady, why don't you step out and get some fresh air with me for a moment? You look like you could use it. The man spun around. She's fine where she is. The words came out too sharp, too fast. The silence that followed was heavy. Deputy Flores took a small step forward. Sir, it's no trouble. It's a long drive for anyone. Let's just take a look at that light again. I have the warning form right here. Riley kept his eyes on the girl. He gave her the smallest, most reassuring nod he could manage. Asterisk, it's okay. Come on. Asterisk for a long second. She didn't move. Then, moving as if she were made of glass, she unbuckled her seatbelt. She pushed the door open and stepped down onto the gravel. She stood there, hugging herself, looking at the ground. Come on over here, away from the road, Riley said, walking a few paces toward the front of his cruiser, putting the bulk of the vehicle between them and the man. She followed, her steps slow. When they were out of the man's direct sight, Riley crouched down a little, bringing himself closer to her eye level. He could see she was shaking. You did really good back there, he said softly. That was very brave. She just stared at the gravel, a tear escaping and tracing a path down her cheek. You showed me the phone, he whispered. Is it under the mat? She nodded, a quick, jerky movement. Who were you trying to call? Her voice, when it came, was so quiet he almost couldn't hear it. It was the sound of a hope almost gone. My mom. The two words hit him like a punch. He kept his voice steady. Where's your mom? He took my phone, she whispered, a sob catching in her throat. He said she was sick. He said she didn't want to talk to me. He said we were going on a trip to help her. But he's lying. I haven't talked to her in a week. I want to go home. Deputy Riley felt a cold anger settle in his stomach. He looked over the roof of the car. The man, David Klein, was watching them, his eyes darting between Riley and Deputy Flores, who was calmly writing on her clipboard. Blocking his path. It was no longer about a broken light. It was about a stolen phone, a silenced child, and a story that was crumbling into dust. The real journey, the dangerous one, was just beginning to come to light. The gravel crunched softly under Deputy Riley's boots as he knelt there, the girl's whispered words hanging in the cold air between them. He took my phone. I want to go home. He could feel the fine tremors running through her small frame. This wasn't just a scared kid on a trip. This was a child who felt trapped. Okay, he said, his voice low and steady, a rock in her swirling fear. You're safe now. You did the right thing. Can you tell me your name? She kept her eyes on the ground. Chloe, she whispered. All right, Chloe. My name is Deputy Riley, and that's Deputy Flores over there. We're here to help you, and we're not going anywhere. I need you to be brave for just a little bit longer. Can you do that? She gave another tiny, shaky nod. Over by the RV, the man David Klein was getting visibly agitated. He kept trying to look past Deputy Flores, who was standing her ground, her posture relaxed but firm. What's he saying to her? Klein's voice carried, trying to sound like a concerned uncle, but landing closer to panic. She gets nervous around strangers. She should come back to the RV. Deputy Flores held up the clipboard. Almost done with this warning, sir. Just need your signature right here. She was a pro, using the boring paperwork as a wall, keeping him occupied and right where they wanted him. Riley knew they had reached the tipping point. The quiet stop was over. He needed to secure the scene and, most importantly, the evidence Chloe had risked so much to point out. He stood up slowly, placing himself between Chloe and the man's line of sight. He keyed the small microphone on his shoulder, his voice clear but quiet enough that only the dispatcher and Deputy Flores would hear him through their earpieces. County, be advised. We have a possible 10 to 96 juvenile involved. Situation is contained, but escalating. Request an additional unit and notify Child Protective Services for a standby. A 10 to 96. A mental subject or a person in need of care. It was the code that would make everyone move faster. He walked back toward the RV, his movements calm but purposeful. Deputy Flores saw him coming and finished her conversation with Klein. All set, Mr. Klein. Just get that fixed. Klein ignored her, his eyes locking onto Riley. What's going on? Why is she still over there? We need to get back on the road. Mr. Klein, Riley said, his tone leaving no room for argument. I need you to step over here with Deputy Flores for a moment. We have a few more questions. What questions? About a brake light? Klein's laugh was brittle, fake. This is ridiculous. It's not about the light anymore, sir. Riley met his gaze directly. The friendly pretense was gone. Please, step over to Deputy Flores's vehicle. The man's face hardened. For a second, Riley thought he might run or fight. But he looked at the two deputies, at the second cruiser, and the fight seemed to drain out of him, replaced by a sullen, tight-lipped anger. He shuffled over to the patrol car, where Deputy Flores gently guided him to stand near the hood dot with the man secured. Riley turned back to the RV. He opened the passenger door. The stale, closed-up smell wafted out. He looked down at the rubber floor mat by the seat. Kneeling on the running board, he lifted the edge. There it was. A smartphone in a glittery blue case, powered off, wedged between the mat and the metal floorboard. He carefully picked it up, handling it by the edges. He pressed the power button. The screen stayed black. Dead battery. He stepped back, holding the phone. He walked over to where Chloe stood, still hugging herself by his cruiser. He showed it to her. Is this it, Chloe? The sight of the phone seemed to break another piece of the wall inside her. Her eyes filled with fresh tears, and she nodded vigorously. He took it last week, when I tried to call my mom. He said I was being disobedient. Do you know the passcode? It's my birthday, she said, her voice a little stronger now. 0214. Riley nodded. He walked to his cruiser, opened the front passenger door, and grabbed a portable power bank from his gear bag. He plugged the phone in. A red battery symbol appeared on the screen. It would need a few minutes. He turned his attention back to Klein. The man was watching him, his jaw clenched. Riley walked over to him. Mr. Klein, you said this young lady is your niece. What is her full name and date of birth? The man blinked, his mind scrambling. Her name is Chloe Miller. Her birthday is, it's in August. The 10th, I think. Riley didn't react. He just turned and looked at Deputy Flores. She had her own small notepad out. And her mother's name? Your sister, I presume? Yes, my sister. Her name is Karen Miller. The answers were coming slower, each one a gamble. And you're on a road trip. Where is your sister? Why isn't she with you? She's sick. She needed a break. I'm helping out. Klein was sweating now. Despite the cold dot at that moment, a low chime came from Riley's cruiser. The phone had enough juice to turn on. Riley walked back, leaving Klein under Deputy Flores's watchful eye. The screen lit up, displaying a lock-screen photo of Chloe and a woman with a warm smile, their cheeks pressed together. Her mom. He entered the passcode. 0214. The phone unlocked. He didn't dig through her private messages. He went straight to the recent calls. The last outgoing call, over a week ago, was to a contact labeled Mom. It had lasted only 42 seconds. After that, nothing. Dozens of missed calls from Mom filled the log. Then, the calls from that number had stopped 3 days ago. He opened the text messages with the same contact. The last message from Chloe, sent the same day as the short call, read, *Mom, he's acting weird. He says we have to go on a trip right now. I'm scared. There was no reply. The last message from her mom, sent 2 days after that, was a block of frantic text. *Chloe, baby, please answer. The police are here. Where are you? David isn't answering his phone. Please call me as soon as you get this. I love you. That was all Riley needed to see. His heart felt heavy. He opened his own phone and dialed the number listed as Mom. It rang once, twice. Then a woman's voice, hoarse with exhaustion and fear, answered. Hello, Chloe? Ma'am, this is Deputy Riley with the County Sheriff's Office. I'm not your daughter, but I am with her. She is safe. There was a gasp on the other end, then a sound that was half sob, half cry of pure relief. Oh, thank God. Thank God. Is she okay? Where is she? Where is David? She's physically okay, Mom. We have her. We also have a David Klein detained. Can you confirm your full name for me and your relation to Chloe? My name is Lisa, the woman said, weeping openly now. Lisa, I'm her mother. David is my ex-boyfriend. We broke up a month ago. He took her from school a week ago. He told the school I was in an accident, and he was her emergency contact. I've been going out of my mind. The police here have a missing persons report. I have the case number. As she recited the details, the puzzle pieces clicked into place with a cold, sickening finality. This wasn't a family trip. This was a custody grab, a kidnapping fueled by a twisted sense of control by a man who couldn't accept no. Riley looked over at David Klein. The man was staring at the ground, his shoulders slumped. He knew the game was up. The web of lies he'd spun the sick mother. The fun adventure had dissolved in the face of a dead phone, a brave girl's silent signal, and a mother's love ringing through from 3 states away. "Lisa, listen to me," Riley said, his voice firm but kind. "Chloe is safe. We're going to take care of her. A caseworker will be here soon. We need to get your official statement and connect with your local police. I'm going to let you talk to your daughter right now, okay?" He walked the few steps to where Chloe stood, holding out the phone. "It's for you," he said softly. "It's your mom." Chloe's hands were trembling so badly she could barely take it. She lifted the phone to her ear. "Mom?" Her voice was small, cracked. Whatever her mother said on the other end, it broke the last of the dam. Chloe's face crumpled, and she slid down to sit on the cold gravel right there, curling around the foam as sobs racked her body. But they weren't sobs of fear anymore. They were sobs of release, of a terrible weight finally lifting. The words poured out of her in a jumbled, tearful stream. "I'm okay. A policeman helped me. He was nice. I'm sorry. I want to come home." Watching her, Deputy Riley felt a mix of profound sadness and solid resolution. The silent Zozos had been heard. The hidden truth was now in the open, ugly, and clear. The hardest part for Chloe was over. Now, the process of healing and the long journey back home could finally begin. The sound of the girls crying was the only thing that mattered on that lonely stretch of road. It wasn't the quiet, scared tears from before. These were deep, shaking sobs that came from the very bottom of her lungs. She was curled on the gravel, the phone pressed to her ear like a lifeline, listening to her mother's voice. Deputy Riley gave her space. He just stood nearby, a quiet presence letting her have this moment. He heard her broken words. "I missed you so much. He said you were sick. He said you didn't want me." Each sentence was a knife, confirming the ugly story. He looked over at David Klein. The man was now sitting in the back of Deputy Fleury's cruiser, the door open, his head in his hands. He wasn't fighting anymore. He just looked hollow, defeated. The act was completely gone. A third sheriff's SUV pulled up, lights off but adding to the official presence. An older sergeant stepped out, his face serious. He took in the scene, the crying girl, the man in custody, the 2 deputies. He walked over to Riley. "Talk to me," the sergeant said. His voice low. Riley gave him the quick version. The gas station, the hand signal, the hidden phone, the call to the mother, the missing persons report from 3 states away. He kept it clean, just the facts. The sergeant let out a slow breath, nodding as he looked at Chloe. "Good work. CPS is on the way. About 10 minutes out. We'll need a full statement from her when she's ready. But let her talk to her mom as long as she needs." He walked over to Deputy Flores' car to deal with Klein. The legal process was starting to turn. Slow and heavy, like a large wheel beginning to roll. Riley's focus was on Chloe. Her sobs were beginning to soften, fading into hiccups and sniffles. She was talking more quietly now, just listening. He walked to his own cruiser and grabbed a gray wool blanket from his emergency kit. He approached her slowly, making sure she saw him coming. He crouched down again, not too close. "Chloe? It's cold on the ground. Here." He held out the blanket. She looked up at him, her face blotchy and wet. She nodded. He gently draped the blanket over her shoulders. She pulled it tight around herself, still holding the phone. "Is it okay if I talk to your mom again for a second?" he asked softly, just to sort out the next steps. She whispered into the phone, "The deputy needs to talk to you again, Mom." Then she held the phone out to him. He took it. "Lisa? This is Deputy Riley again." "Thank you," she said, her voice thick but clearer now. "You have no idea. You have no idea what you've done. We're just glad we found her, Riley said. A caseworker from Child Protective Services is coming to meet Chloe. They'll stay with her until we can figure out the best way to get her back to you. It might take a day or two, with all the paperwork and coordinating with your police department. But she's safe. She'll be with someone whose only job is to look after her. Can I please stay on the phone with her until someone gets there? Lisa's request was desperate. Of course, Riley said. Absolutely. I'm going to give the phone back to her. You just keep talking to her. We'll take care of everything on this end. He handed the phone back to Chloe. She took it eagerly, tucking herself back into the blanket and the sound of her mother's voice. Riley stood up and turned his attention to the other deputy. Flores had Klein out of the car now, reading him his rights in a calm, clear voice. The man listened, staring at the ground, nodding silently. When she asked if he understood, he just mumbled, "Yeah." The sergeant was on his own radio, talking to the detectives back at the office, starting the process of linking up with the police in Lisa's hometown. The charge wouldn't just be a broken taillight. It would be something much heavier. Interference with custody. Possibly unlawful transport of a minor across state lines. The exact words would come later, but the outcome was certain. A few minutes later, a plain white sedan with a state seal on the door pulled up. A woman in her 40s with a kind, tired face got out. She was carrying a backpack. This was the caseworker. She spoke with the sergeant briefly. Then her eyes found Chloe. Her expression softened, but she was professional. She wasn't here to be a new friend. She was here to be a guardian. The caseworker walked over to Riley. "I'm with Child Protective Services," she said quietly. "I'll take it from here for her care." Riley nodded. He went over to Chloe and knelt once more. "Chloe, this lady is here to help. She's going to stay with you. Okay? She's going to make sure you're comfortable and get you whatever you need." Chloe looked at the caseworker, fear flickering in her eyes again. It was a new stranger. The caseworker didn't come too close. She gave a small, warm smile. "Hi, Chloe. My job is just to hang out with you until we can get you home to your mom. I've got some water in my bag and a snack if you're hungry. You can keep talking on the phone as long as you want." Chloe looked from the caseworker to Deputy Riley. He gave her a firm, reassuring nod. "It's okay. She's here to help you. I promise." That seemed to be enough. Chloe slowly stood up, the blanket wrapped around her like a cape. She followed the caseworker to the white sedan. The caseworker opened the passenger door for her, letting her sit in the warm car, still talking quietly to her mother. With Chloe in safe hands, the scene changed. The emotional rawness was replaced by procedure. Detectives arrived. They took official statements from Riley and Flores. They took photographs of the RV, of the spot on the floor where the phone was hidden. They carefully bagged the phone itself as evidence. David Klein was formally placed in the back of a patrol car, this time with the doors locked. He stared straight ahead through the window, not looking at anyone. The RV, now a crime scene, was impounded. It would be searched thoroughly later, as the afternoon light began to fade into a pale orange dusk. The flurry of activity settled. The detectives and the sergeant had what they needed for now. The caseworker's car was still running. A small plume of exhaust in the cold air. Riley felt the adrenaline of the last hour finally start to drain away, leaving him tired. He walked over to the caseworker's car. The window was down a crack. Chloe was leaning against the seat, her eyes closed. She was still holding the phone to her ear, but she was quiet. She was just listening. Exhausted. The caseworker saw him and stepped out. "She's wiped out," she whispered. "Her mom is just telling her a story about their dog. She's falling asleep." We're going to take her to a foster home for the night. A very nice, vetted family. It's just for a short time. We'll start the process of getting her back to her mother first thing in the morning." "Good," Riley said. He felt a deep sense of relief. The system was clunky and slow, but it was working. It was putting layers of protection around a girl who had none just hours before. He leaned down to look into the car. Chloe's eyes fluttered open. She saw him and slowly took the phone from her ear. "Mom, the deputy is here again." She held the phone out. He took it. "Lisa?" "Deputy," Lisa said, her voice full of a gratitude so deep it had no words. "How can I ever thank you?" "Just be there for her when she gets home," Riley said simply. "She's a very brave kid. She's been through a lot." "I will. I promise. Tell her. Tell her I'll see her so soon." Riley handed the phone back to Chloe. "Your mom says she'll see you soon." He reached into his pocket and pulled out one of his official business cards, the kind with the sheriff's star on it. He wrote his personal cell number on the back. He handed it to the caseworker. "If she needs anything before she goes home, or if the mother has questions, they can call me." "Any time." The caseworker took it with a nod. "We'll take good care of her." Chloe looked at him through the window. The emptiness was gone from her eyes. They were just the tired, sad eyes of a child who wanted her mother. But the terror was gone. "Thank you," she mouthed silently. He gave her a small smile and a thumb's dash-up dot. He watched as the caseworker got in the car, said something gentle to Chloe, and slowly pulled the sedan onto the road, heading toward town, toward a warm bed and a kind family for the night. The other cars began to disperse too. The cruiser with Klein in the back left for the county jail. The detectives drove off. Soon it was just Riley and Deputy Flores standing by their cars in the gathering dark, the gas station lights glowing in the distance. Flores let out a long sigh. "That was a close one," she said. "If you hadn't seen her at the pump." "She's the one who did the hard part," Riley said, his eyes on the spot where the caseworker's car had vanished. "All she had was a hand signal and a whole lot of courage. We just answered the call." They got in their cruisers. As Riley drove back toward the office to finish his report, the quiet of the evening felt different. It wasn't just the end of a shift anymore. It was the quiet after a storm had passed, leaving behind a profound, grateful peace. The hidden truth was revealed, and a long journey home had finally begun. The days that followed were a blur of paperwork. Deputy Riley spent hours at his desk, filling out forms, writing his narrative report, and giving official statements to the detectives who were building the case against David Klein, the quiet gas. Station Stop had turned into a full-blown interstate. Investigation. He kept thinking about Chloe, the image of her curled up on the gravel, sobbing into the phone, stayed with him. The caseworker had called him once, the day after, just to update him. Chloe was safe in a temporary foster home. She was quiet, still shaken, but eating and sleeping. The process to get her back to her mother was moving, but it was like a big, slow machine, lots of gears turning. Lots of phone calls between states. The important thing, the caseworker said, was that Chloe felt safe. She had the deputy's card on the little nightstand next to her bed. She hadn't called, but knowing it was there seemed to help. About a week later, Riley was finishing a late lunch at his desk when his personal cell phone buzzed. It was an unknown number with an area code from Chloe's home state. He answered. "Deputy Riley?" It was a woman's voice, tired but clear. It was Lisa, Chloe's mother. "Yes, ma'am." "How are you?" "How's Chloe?" "We're home," Lisa said, and he could hear the smile in her voice, a real one this time. "We got back yesterday. The police here and the child services people, they all worked so fast, once they knew where she was. They put us on a plane. She's right here. She's been asking to talk to you. There was a rustling sound, then a small, tentative voice came on the line. Hello? Hey, Chloe, Riley said, leaning back in his chair, a genuine grin spreading across his face. I heard you're home. How does it feel? It's good, she said. Her voice was still quiet, but it wasn't a scared whisper anymore. It was just soft. My room is the same. Mom made my favorite pasta. That sounds perfect, he said. He didn't ask about the hard stuff. He didn't ask about the trip or the fear. He just talked about the good, normal things. How's your dog? The one your mom was telling you about on the phone? He licked my face for 10 minutes when I walked in, she said, and he heard a little giggle. It was the best sound he'd heard all week. They talked for a few more minutes. She told him about seeing her friends at school for a quick visit, about sleeping in her own bed. Normal kid stuff. It was all medicine. Before she handed the phone back to her mother, she grew quiet for a second. Then she said, Thank you for seeing me. At the gas station. Thank you for being so brave, he replied. You remember that, okay? How brave you were. He spoke to Lisa again for a few minutes. She told him the legal proceedings against David Klein were just starting. He was being held without bail, facing serious charges. She was just focused on her daughter, on helping her feel normal again. She thanked him once more, her voice choking up. Before they said goodbye, Riley put the phone down and stared out the window of the sheriff's office. The tight knot of worry he hadn't even fully admitted he was carrying finally loosened. She was home. The story had an ending. A few weeks later, the sheriff called him into his office. The sheriff was a big man with a thick mustache and sharp eyes. He gestured for Riley to sit. That gas station case, the sheriff began, shuffling some papers. It's gotten some attention. The mother wrote a long letter to the county commissioners. The DA's office is impressed with the work. Clean stop, good procedure, rock-solid chain of evidence. Because of that phone you found, and the girl's statement, Klein's lawyer is talking about a plea deal. He's not getting out any time soon. Riley nodded. That's good to hear, sir. The sheriff leaned forward. More than good. That girl could have been lost for a long time. What you did, noticing that signal, that's the job. That's exactly the job. We're putting you in for a commendation. Riley felt a flush of pride, but it was a quiet kind. Sir, with respect, it wasn't just me. Deputy Flores was there, the sergeant, the caseworker. And it started with you, the sheriff said firmly. Don't downplay it. You saw a person when others might have just seen a passenger. That's what we're here for. The commendation was nice. A piece of paper for his file, a handshake at a ceremony. But it wasn't the real reward. The real reward came a month later. It was a small, square package addressed to him at the sheriff's office, covered in colorful stamps from another state. Inside, wrapped in bubble wrap, was a simple clay mug. It was a little lopsided, painted a bright, sunny yellow with clumsy blue polka dots. Glazed and fired. A note was tucked inside, in a child's careful printing. Asterisk, Dear Deputy Riley. Asterisk, asterisk, I made this in art class. It's for your coffee. My mom helped me mail it. Thank you for bringing me home. Your friend Chloe, asterisk, he turned the mug over in his hands. It was heavy, solid. You could see the little fingerprint impressions in the clay where small hands had shaped it. He thought of her concentrating on it, painting the dots, maybe feeling a little bit of peace while she did it. This wasn't a trophy. It was a piece of a life getting back on track. He brought it home that night, washed it carefully, and placed it on the counter. The next morning, he poured his coffee into the bright yellow mug. It felt different, Warmer dot life at the sheriff's office went back to normal. The stray dogs, the paperwork, the occasional traffic stop. But something had shifted for Riley. He found himself looking just a little longer at the cars he pulled over. Not with suspicion, but with attention. He paid more mind to the passengers, not just the drivers. He remembered that the most important cries for help are often the ones that make no sound at all. He kept the mug on his desk at the station. Other deputies would ask about it. The polka dot special, huh? They'd joke. He'd just smile and say, best mug I've ever had. Sometimes, on the long, quiet patrols, he'd drive past the Pine Creek Gas and Go. The flickering sign was still broken. The same clerk was inside. It looked utterly ordinary. But to him, it was a landmark. It was the place where a silent signal had crossed a parking lot and changed the course of 2 lives. He knew Chloe's recovery would be a long road. There would be bad dreams, hard questions, moments of fear. But she had her mother. She had her home. She had her own bravery to cling to. The system, for all its slowness, had worked. The hidden truth had been pulled into the light, and the man who hid it was facing the consequences. For Deputy Riley, the story became a quiet reminder. It reminded him that the job wasn't about the big chases or the dramatic arrests. Most of the time, it was about seeing. It was about noticing the small, terrified movement behind a dirty window. It was about understanding that a trembling hand wasn't just waving. It was screaming in silence. And when he drank his coffee from that lopsided yellow mug, he remembered the sound of a mother's voice reuniting with her child over a phone line, and he knew that was the only commendation he would ever really need. The story was over, but the lesson and the warmth of that simple mug remained.